So now the question is, which one of my points would you like? Like usually, actually, you have to basically convince me that eating meat is morally wrong. But I've already presented you two arguments. Would you still like to just make the case why it is morally wrong? Like you basically have two options. You can either tell me that my moral framework is wrong, or
Hmm.
that I'm already like, and you have a better moral framework, and I have to swap my moral framework for yours because yours is better, or you can show that my moral framework is inconsistent. I think that's the only two options that you basically have.
I am not sure if I honestly completely, totally understood your moral framework. So let me just make a
Okay,
case for sort of a historic argument, right? Like
sure.
it's called the circle of moral concern theory. I don't know if you've ever read Peter
No,
Singer.
no.
Yeah.
I know about
So,
him. I know about him.
yeah.
I've watched a lot of videos where people talk about him, but I haven't read his books.
So he didn't come up with this theory, but I think he popularized it. Basically, if we look throughout human history, there are many times where only certain people of certain groups deserve moral consideration. It used to, if we, start looking after colonization, right? It was white men deserved moral consideration. They could own property, they could have slaves, they could use women how they wanted, and that's how it was. And the oppressed people didn't have a say over that, right? Then, we abolish slavery, there's civil rights. They say we should expand our moral circle to include people of other races because while we have physical differences like the color of our skin, we're still all individuals who deserve to be considered and deserve compassion and care and justice. And then women's rights, right? It's like, okay, just because I'm different gender or sex, that doesn't mean that I can't speak intelligently. That doesn't mean that I shouldn't vote. That doesn't mean that I shouldn't be allowed to own property. So women fought for their right to vote, and then that led to women's liberation. Not everywhere. It's still, pretty bad in many places in the world, but we still see that expansion of the moral circle to where we get over our differences, we look at our similarities and see that we have more in common. At least we are equal in our ability to suffer. And to me, the next logical step is to expand it to different species because humans are just one species. We technically are animals. We feel pain in similar ways to animals. They have feelings, they have emotions, they have the abilities to bond. So we're similar to them in many ways. And I think that we should ignore the differences, the fact that they have feather, fur, fins, or fangs. That's not what matters. What matters is the ability to feel pain, suffer, and have interests. So to me, it's about the expansion of our moral circle.
Mm-hmm. So,
Does that make sense?
uh, no, I would be lying if I would say yes, because like I would say that first of all, like that would presume that there is no reason why we should stop where you stopped. Like we could just
We keep
continue,
going.
yeah, and like that would leave us starving at some point.
Oh, you mean if like we continued to
I mean, yeah, that
include plants?
yeah, yeah.
So I think that a lot of these problems can also be solved with technology. Have you heard of precision fermentation?
And that's again, you're trying to go into the engineering part of things,
No,
but I'm talking
well,
about
it's
like
it's
the
directly
ethics.
relevant. It's directly relevant,
No,
right?
no,
But we could get to a place where we don't even have to kill
yeah,
plants.
but let's say I want to do it.
That you want to kill plants.
Yes.
Okay. I once again am coming from a place of sentience. So to me,
Okay, then
kill all
all
the
of
plants
that,
you want.
then all of the historic things that you talked about were basically irrelevant, right?
No, 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 that's not true because all the individuals I mentioned throughout my little historical lesson are proven to be sentient.
Sure, but just coincidentally,
No, they
like
fought for their rights because they are sentient individuals who have interests and deserve justice. So
sure,
what
but
you're doing is creating a human in-group and animal out-group. So human, actually, I don't even know. I haven't asked you that. Do you think humans deserve moral consideration?
before we go there, yes, I do. But before we go there, so that was the first point. Like the first issue that I have is that you expanded basically from, you said we have to expand our consideration from human to animal.
I didn't say we
And
have to. I said that, we
I mean, that's a
should
moral,
be.
I mean, yeah, that's a moral have to, right? Like, I know you're trying to like, um, I know you don't have to be careful in like the way you phrase it, like, because you could be seen as like harsh or something like that. I think like when I say you have to, I'm talking about like a moral should, right? That's have to.
Okay.
So I'm not saying that you're going to go with the gun to people's heads and force them to do something. You know what I mean?
Right. Well,
So when I
vegans a
say
lot of time get
yeah,
the whole like you're forcing your views and
okay,
stuff like that. So I do actually have to be careful. I'm like a public figure for an organization in the
I
US that's involved with politics. So
I
I
can
try to
tell
have some
that you're careful.
consideration to my
Yeah, yeah.
words.
But
Yeah.
I mean, I think it should your carefulness. I understand it, but it should not be in the way of having like a normal conversation, right? When I say have to, like I mean like I mean the moral imperative to do something. So basically, what you're saying is that we should uh expand this thing and like this consideration for
Yeah.
animals as well. And the way I understood it is that basically we've done so once, we've done so twice, it was correct. We've done so, now we're doing it the third, like you said, for from white people to also non-white people, and then to women as well. and
Those are just the
and
examples
these
I've
are correct.
chosen. There are many other, like, I mean, we can even
Sure,
put children in there, right? Like, children
sure,
used to have to be forced to work. People didn't care
sure.
about
We've done
children,
it
so we've
once,
expanded to
we've
include
done
them
it
too.
twice, we've done it for the third time, and now we're doing it for the first time. Why
We've
the
done
hell
it,
shouldn't it be right
well,
this
we've
time?
done it
Right?
so
That's
many
what you'd say.
times,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. We've done it like so that's and then I'm asking you, then why not continue? Right?
Continue
And then
after
yeah,
animals.
and then you say no, but sentience. And then I think like, yeah, okay, then
Yeah.
all of this logic that you gave me before, we can throw it out of the window, because it's not a good predictor for if it's correct to do so, if you then have to bring in sentience into the game in
You
order to.
didn't let me explain my scale of sentience. You stopped me before that. So
No,
maybe
but
we could talk about that, and then that
yeah,
might inform some of
but it
this
doesn't really
discussion.
wait. I just want to, before we go there, I just want to, I mean, you have laid out your main argument. I would really like to like stick with that for a moment, and then we can go to sentience. So that's the first
Yeah, but
issue I
since
have.
sentience is
That,
part of my main argument, I do feel like I should more clearly define that for people.
sure, you can, but I just want to lay out the second problem I have with the argument basically that you're making, is that or if you want, you can go ahead. Define sentience. I understand why you want to define it. Let's go. Sorry.
Sure. So sentience, I think that I'm sure a lot of people would say you either have sentience or you don't. And I think that could be correct. It's hard scientifically, right? Because we don't have any ability to understand what anyone else is feeling, even you, right? Like, I don't even know that you're sentient for a fact. It could just all be happening inside my head if we
Yeah.
really look at it philosophically. So, the practical, I'm very practical. Like, I come from more of a background of stoicism and action oriented philosophy. So, I think about it in terms of a scale of sentience. So, like, let's say we have humans over here, right? The top of the scale. We've got like whales, dolphins, really highly intelligent animals that we know have really deep bonds with their family and have long lifespans and things like that. Pigs would be here, dogs can come down a little further, maybe chickens, and then we could have fish. There's still a lot of scientific evidence coming out about fish, and there's all different types of fish, so I don't want to like lump them into one category. Then you go further and further down, you have maybe bivalves, right? Which I think is an interesting topic in discussions about veganism, because some vegans say we definitely shouldn't eat bivalves. There are vegans who do eat them. So oysters, mollusks, clams, scallops, because they tend to behave more like plants than animals. So maybe there's some sentience there, but we really don't know. And then you have plants at the end of the scale. So the way I see it is when we have a
Okay, so you
choice.
have a scale of sentience, and
Yeah.
the more you're on this side, the less you should do it, right? The less you should kill.
No, no, no. The more you're on, yeah,
Yeah,
right. So
yeah,
the higher end of the scale of
yeah.
sentience, like pigs, humans, whales,
Okay, and
um,
that's
y-
that's
and
perfect
then at
that
the bottom,
yeah, and that's my second part of the problem of your main thesis is that I know that, like, that's what I thought, that you have this scale, but then I'm like, with women, with children, with black people, or non-white people, I don't feel like we're moving. Like, I don't think that you're saying that we move down the scale, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
we didn't move one
We're
inch.
still in the
We
human category.
we stayed exactly where we were, and we
Sure,
didn't
but we
move
can
one
bring
inch.
other
And
animals
that,
into it too. Like we could say dogs in a lot of
wait, other
societies have that
animals?
more. So then, yeah, like dogs, whales, like a lot of countries have banned
Yeah, but
whaling.
you
So we
you
have moved on the scale of sentience
you made it look
historically.
like we have moved, but actually it would be the first move on the scale, right?
Well,
So
we already
so
have because
no,
whaling is banned in a lot of
no, no, no,
places.
no,
Some
no.
countries already have.
The examples you gave were like black people, children, and women, right?
Yeah.
And that will be the next
That
step.
was to
And
explain the circle
we
of
haven't
moral
moved.
concern from the supremacy mindset, I should clarify.
We
So
haven't
like the
moved an
in-group,
inch.
out-group
Yeah,
thinking.
I know that you don't
But
think that.
but people back then, when men would have considered women lower on the sentient scale, so it was a move to them.
Yeah, exactly. So there were the problem actually was that, not that they included other things into their consideration. The thing they did is they acknowledged that these are also humans. It's
Right,
not
they
like,
acknowledge that they should also have moral
no, no, no,
consideration.
no, 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 no,
So
no. Only with them becoming humans, they got the moral consideration. So the issue with racism is basically that the person would not consider them human. It's not that
right.
they would consider it something else and then
Yeah.
allow it in their circle. It's like they say, no, this is also human. And the so
Well,
so
I guess we
so
should
that's,
also clarify historically that it wasn't typically that white people were like, oh, let's give black people rights. It was more like there were struggles over it and fights, and
of course,
eventually
of
the
course,
oppressed were able to win their rights.
of course,
So,
but
yeah, you're right that the way I framed it wasn't entirely historically
yeah,
accurate
so I
or,
wouldn't even use that argument.
yeah.
Like, I would throw this argument just away, and we can just now go with your idea of value of life. Basically, comes from, like, because you agree that plants have life, right?
Right, but that they're not
But that they're not
sentient.
sentient. So that's, I think, your
Yeah.
core argument, and I think we should
But
now
that's
just
not
focus on that.
me. That's once again, I want to tie it back to like this is not me. This is the scientific literature and what it's saying. Because I would like to take
No, 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 no. Wait,
what I think out of it as much as
wait.
possible.
Hold on, Natalie. Hold on. The scientific literature doesn't say anything about the value of life.
But
The
they
scientific
say
literature
sentience.
says that stuff about sentience, yes,
Yes,
and
that's
we
what I
can talk
mean.
about that, and I would really love to hear, I would like to
Yeah.
talk about that. But saying that science says that veganism is correct, that is not, like, that is, for this reason, that is just not correct, because, like, you
That's not what I was
attribute,
saying. That's a straw man.
okay, maybe I misunderstood. That's what I thought you were saying. Okay. So you're not saying that science is saying that the value of life comes from sentience, right? Because that
I
was
did
what I was
the
saying.
phrase
I was steel manning.
value of life.
I was steel
Oh,
manning your position. I said your position is that the value of life comes from sentience, and then you said, no, I don't say that. Science says that,
yeah.
and science
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
say that. Science
So my
makes statements
opinion is
about
more based
sentience.
on sentience, or my understanding of it is based on the scientific evidence. I'm not saying science equals veganism is right, but I'm saying like if we look at these scientific principles that people have agreed on, then
Then
we can draw the conclusion that veganism is right.
no, that's not true, because you have to make the leap that also sentience is determining the value of life. Like, that's also a rule that you first have to establish. Science doesn't tell you that. Like, science doesn't tell you, we've looked under the microscope and we found out that the value of life comes from sentience. No, science doesn't say that. Science, what science,
Right, but they say like what or
what
who is
is,
sentient.
to a certain extent, and then we can now talk about what they're actually saying. Okay, but
Right.
it
Yeah.
definitely doesn't say we found the correlation between value of life and sentience, because that's
No,
something
no.
value. No, so that's why that was the issue that I had with your point,
But
because
there are, scientific groups that have, like the Cambridge Declaration on Consciousness, right? And they come together and they're like, hey, like, now we know lobsters are sentient. Now we know crabs are sentient. Like, maybe we should stop boiling them alive. So within the scientific community, there are people who
so
are looking at sentience and saying, hey, we should change our moral behavior based on that scientific
mhm.
evidence.
So I have a question. So do you think that sentience is a binary? I don't think that you think that, right? You think it's a scale.
Yeah, it's tough, because there definitely seems to be something binary about it. Um, but it also, to me, does seem to be sort of intertwined with a lot of different things, like ability, intellectual ability, lifespan, for example. Like, obviously, there are rule breakers in that as well, right? Like, if we look at coral reefs, I think technically they're not sentient, but they have a really long lifespan. So it's not always like a one to one. So yeah, we can go with scale for this purposes, just because I'm not 100% sure.
But it's either but you have basically a binary, like, as far as I understand it, you have a binary way of making your moral statement about what you should be able to kill and eat and whatnot, right? So it's I would always get a yes or no from you,
Somewhat,
right?
somewhat. So I'm not convinced one way or another that we shouldn't eat oysters or that we should.
Okay, isn't that a bit of a problem of that your moral framework is not basically giving you? So my moral framework is like pretty like it's I believe my moral framework is arbitrary. It is just a rule that is around humans. So
So,
I
so
believe
by your moral framework, do you think that any human has the right to do anything they want to any animal?
I think that there is a value to that life. So just as there is the value to a tree's life as well, and I think that if it's necessary, quote unquote, it humans can have basically infinite possibilities to do whatever they want. So let me put it to you like this. So the ultimate necessity is death, right? So
Well,
if
death isn't a necessity, it's just something that's going to happen
no
to
no
you.
no no I'm sorry, the thing that allows for everything, like everything is necessary if you're going to die otherwise. That's what I mean.
Oh, yeah, for your survival, you mean?
Yes. I mean, just
Okay.
like as a semantic, like as a semantics game, like when I say it was necessary for me to eat, if I was going to die immediately after not eating that, then it's I could even eat human meat,
Sure.
right? Like there is cases of people having been like on an island and there is no food, and
Yeah,
then they do engage in cannibalism, and no one basically judges for them for that. Like they come back.
I I agree with you
Yeah.
on that.
Okay, great.
That's
So
fine.
and then we can go further down the line, right? And then we can say, okay, uh, what if I eat? What if I don't die immediately? But what if my lifespan shortens by like half an hour, right? And I think,
But you'd have to prove that it would shorten by half an hour, which is
yeah,
an impossible
let's assume it does.
thing to prove. Okay.
Why would it be impossible for us? Like we have statistics on how much smoking shortens your life, right? We can always construct an example where not doing something would reduce your lifespan by the damage it does to
But it's
your
not
health.
it's not a one-to-one though. Like, even if smoking increases your risk of cancer 15% or whatever, that doesn't mean that everyone who smokes is going to get cancer. There are people who smoke who live to
No, no,
110 years old.
sure, but we could just look at basically an action that I'm taking and determine whether this action is necessary or not based on what the cost is of what I'm doing and what I'm getting out of it, right? If I prolong
So,
my life by like half an hour by doing that, right, or by X amount by doing that, and the cost is, like, for example, let's say I increase my lifespan by 5 minutes. Okay, we would not be. I think most people would say it's not cool to kill another human being for that.
For 5 minutes.
For 5 minutes of more life.
Unless you're in the Hunger Games, then all bets are off.
Okay, you could maybe go further, but like we could increase it more and more. But if we reduce it,
my alarm's going off.
Sure.
Hang on, that's it.
Let me
Yeah. So
let me
what
just
if we went into, like, are you trying to make the case that eating meat increases your lifespan?
no. What I'm saying is the following: you are if someone would be very had not eaten for like a week, and the only thing he has, or had not eaten for like 5 hours, and the only thing he has is a chicken that he can kill and eat, would you be okay with them killing that chicken and eating it?
He's only not eaten for 5 hours. It's not very
Yes.
long.
Yeah, that's not really long.
No.
No, right?
I mean,
But
what else could he eat though? I mean, it depends where he is, right? Like,
but
is he
exactly.
on Mars? Or, I
So
mean, not that they're actually going to bring animals to Mars because they know it's
so
inefficient, but anyway.
what is necessary for you to then, so there is a cost attached to that chicken, right? According to your scale, for example, the sufferance scale, for example, that you have. And then there is the inconvenience basically the person feels from not doing that, right? That's also one thing in the variable, right?
So basically, like, if someone could either eat chicken or walk 3 blocks and get a chickpea sandwich, you're saying that inconvenience
You can
could outweigh the cost of the chicken's life.
I'm not there yet. I'm just constructing a formula basically for you.
Right.
Okay, and we can plug in different things in that formula. So when I say it was necessary for me to eat that chicken, it depends highly on how much would it inconvenience me to not eat that chicken, but also how valuable is that chicken's life. Because if we swap that chicken for a human being, for a human being, what is deemed acceptable to be necessary, like where we would say, yeah, that was necessary, that was actually necessary, would be totally different if we would put a chicken there or if we put a human being there, right?
Well, I think that that's also missing kind of the component of how valuable is that chicken's life to that chicken, right? Which is
No, no,
immensely
no, no,
valuable.
no.
That's the only life they have. And shouldn't
That's
we
not,
take that into account as
we are
well?
talking
We shouldn't
about
just only be
your
looking
moral.
about it in terms of us.
We are just interested in your, not even like all of us, but just your moral consideration. Like your moral consideration would definitely change if it's basically you saying, okay, I'm approving of this action, depends on two factors, on the calculation of two factors. One factor is how much would it inconvenience that person to not eat that chicken? Would it be death or just waiting for half an hour? And the other thing that we can basically plug into that formula is what is at stake. Is it a chicken's life, or is it a human being's life, or is it a plant's life, right?
Sure. Well, could
And
we maybe agree
or
on this,
can we
that
first agree if, yeah?
neither you nor I nor most people watching this have to eat animals to survive and thrive?
No, you try to break out of this. We're not done yet. Unfortunately, we're not done yet. So I think that
Still, you're playing these like weird games where I'm not like really sure where you're trying to go.
I wish you would know it earlier, but I can only explain it to you like in the. I don't want
Yeah.
to. I don't
I
keep
think
you. I don't
I
let
think
you keep
another
waiting
thing
on
that
purpose. Like,
another thing for me is that I'm a lot more interested in action
oh,
than
wait,
just like thinking about philosophy.
but we need to. This
Um,
is ethics. Like your main thing is ethics. You're not. You don't want
my
to
main
eat.
thing is not
you-
ethics. My main thing is banning factory farming in the US.
I think you don't want to engage in this point. If you don't want to, that's okay.
Well,
But
I don't know
but
what
but
you're
but
getting at or
I,
trying to say, so
I'm
I'm
trying to.
just,
Okay.
yeah.
But you can. Are you not curious?
I mean, it seems a little weird to just be putting these, like, numbers and calculations on something as important as someone
That's
else's
something
life.
that you actually do. Like I'm just showing you the thing that I'm doing is I'm presenting you a way of looking at something that you already do. Like you do
But
this
I don't do
calculation and
that.
you do this like when I tell you I was starving for a week and then I ate the chicken, you would be fine with that, right?
If
If
you
I
couldn't get any other
Yes,
food,
if
and
I
it's not
couldn't
about
get
me
any
being
other food.
fine with it,
No,
I
no,
would prefer that chicken didn't die either
you
way,
would
but I
approve.
recognize that it's a necessity, whereas other situations,
Yes.
it's not a necessity.
Exactly, exactly. And
But that's different than, like, just being totally okay with a chicken dying,
no,
right?
no, no, of course, but you don't have a moral issue with my action. You have a problem
It
with the outcome.
depends. It
No.
depends.
Yeah, but it depends on these two factors that I'm trying to lay out to
Right.
you. It depends on what the thing is that I'm eating,
But
and it
but you're
depends
not
on
in that
how much.
situation.
But we're talking. Wait, are you not able to engage in a hypothetical?
I can, it's just I wanna tie it back
I'm
to the
explaining to
individual
you.
choices that people make every day.
Okay, remember what I told you? Like, in order for us to uh, convince each other of if our moral position is correct or not, I either have to find a flaw in your moral system and replace it with a better one, or I have to show an inconsistency in your moral framework, right? And what I'm right now doing is I'm explaining your moral framework, right? And
But I don't
and
like that moral frame. Like,
I'm
I don't
sure,
necessarily agree with it
but then,
because I think that it also changes, like, it almost feels too rule-based for me. Like, this is the rule, this is the
but
rule,
you
whereas
do that.
the
Like, you
world
can
is a
say
lot
I
more
don't.
messy. No, I don't.
But you can
I
say
don't
you
do
don't
that.
do that. But you can say you don't do that. Then you can tell me what your way of determining whether you think an action is acceptable or not. If it's a bad thing, like it's just a general thing. How do you deem a bad thing necessary? Where like there is bad things in the world, like killing someone,
Right.
right? Like killing someone is a bad thing, right? So
Depending on the person.
I don't think depending on the person. I think like depending on again like that would be your opinion, but then you would even more approve of my model because you say basically the thing that dies has a value of life as well, even with humans. You would say so
Well, like, if it's if I could, like, if it's self-defense or if someone's a known
exactly,
rapist and they're gonna go rape a bunch of people, then killing them I think would be good.
exactly. But if someone is going to just steal a penny from you, like the inconvenience is very small, you wouldn't be cool with
Yeah.
me just shooting that thing, right?
Well, no, but I mean, why don't we
It's always this
see? I
calculation
guess I want to
between these two
explain
things.
where maybe my decision making comes from because you're putting all these things on my decision making,
But
but that's not necessarily how I think about it at all. I'm
but you
not in my head making all these calculations or approving of this person or approving of that person. I mean, I know that we live in a world where people eat animals, right? I'm not sitting in judgment of all of them because they're not necessary. I personally think that we should evolve toward a society where people aren't doing that, but it's not
I
like this calculation game I feel doesn't resonate with me at all.
how do you determine whether an action is whether something that is objectively bad, like all things equal, is that is bad, like someone dying? We already agreed that it's always bad. Like we already agreed that
I know I
life is
didn't agree with
precious.
that.
We
I
already
never
agreed that
agreed that
life
life
is
was
precious.
precious. I never agreed that. You said that.
Okay, so human life is precious. Is human life precious to you?
I so that's once again sounds to me like this life is sacred or life is precious. I don't come from that framework. If you want to get more into my morality, a lot of it comes from virtue ethics. Like, we can only, basically how I think about it is we can only control ourselves and our
Do you
actions,
think that
right?
anything is valuable in the world?
Yeah, I mean,
Has
certainly
an
some things
has
are
a
valuable,
is
like
worth protecting? Like
relationships,
animals?
love,
Animals.
animals. Yeah,
Okay, you're
exactly,
really easy to
exactly.
say that animal lives is precious, right? Is
Sure, but
animals' lives
then,
precious?
yeah, I mean, once again, that kind of implies this objective morality,
Worth protecting.
which I like. If I can protect an animal's life over not protecting an animal's life, I will do it, right?
Why? Why?
But
Why? Because it's worth
Because
it.
they value their lives. They're
How do you
having an
know?
experience of life
How do you know?
because they fight for their lives in slaughterhouses. They try to run away. They try to escape pain and move toward pleasure. They have families that they have deep bonds with their families, just like us.
So that sounds to me like you think it's valuable, right?
Sure, but I'm also very focused on what I can control.
So how do you
And I think maybe that's the point that's missing from our discussion.
Natalie, I feel like you don't want to have this. I feel like you're running from the conversation that we're having. Like I'm just like we have a common ground. The common ground is
Right.
that I think that animals dying is bad. Okay.
Then why
Okay.
okay.
No, 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 no. Don't run, please, because I feel like you're running. Like I want you
Well,
to.
I'm just
I
asking
want to
why would you
guide
not
you.
be vegan
I
if
want you
you
because
think that
I want you
animals
to
dying is bad?
I want to guide you through my thoughts and then you will understand. So
Okay.
but you're basically always trying to get out of the train of thought, basically, right? We're
Well,
going
because it
somewhere
just seems like
and
it's
you're
going
just trying to
nowhere.
no, you're just trying to go away wherever I lead you. I ask you, like, is that like you're not even ready to accept that you think that life is precious, although animals is life, animals are life, and at least animals life is precious to you, and you're still not able to say, yeah, life is precious. Like that sounds to me like you don't want to have this conversation, like you're trying to evade the conversation.
Well, I just don't like that framing. Like precious, what is that? It just sounds like a
But you think
little.
that animals life is precious, worth
No, no, I
protecting.
never said that. You keep saying that.
Okay,
Okay, let me just look at what precious even means to make sure we're on the same page about it. Because
valuable,
in
I
my
think.
mind, I think of like something like very like feminized or weak, or precious means something of great value, either material or emotionally, and is cherished or highly esteemed. Okay, so I can go with that now that I understand what you're meaning by it. um I think that animals' lives are valuable
To
to
be
them.
clear, not only what I'm meaning with it, but what also the English language means of it,
Right, right.
right?
I think in the US people use precious in sometimes a different context.
Okay. Um, so we agree that life is
Valuable
valuable, worth protecting. So
for
something dying,
because of that
no, 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 period.
individual though.
Period.
But then you have edge cases, right? Like I don't think a
It
murderer rapist's life is worth
void
protecting.
void of all context.
Okay.
Void of all context, like a tree that is just there. Like that's the most empirical example that I can find that is the most void of context that I can imagine, right? A
But
tree
we
is
could
just
also get into like the idea of
no,
like
no.
should we bring more life into the world, right? And I would say
Okay,
that that's not necessarily morally good. I don't know if you want to have that discussion.
okay, okay. Like
But
if
that's
your
part of why
position,
I'm not as interested in like fully saying yes, life is precious.
but that's the thing. Like the only way you can not say that life is precious is by finding other negative externalities that could come from too much life, like being on Earth, overpopulation, and like the planet not being able to sustain that, and blah 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 blah. But basically, you would have to balance out the positive that is life with a negative, and if the negative would outweigh, and also then it would only be actually sad because all of the other life that already exists is dying, right? Like if the planet collapses, like it would be sad for all of the other life that dies because of too much life. So again, the thing that we're
Yes.
trying to protect, the thing that you would try to protect, the reason why you would say that some life is bad would be other life that you're trying to protect. So at the end of the day, we're again back at life being valuable.
But then another huge part of
No, no,
veganism
no, no,
isn't
no.
just like
Wait,
say, well, no, no, I want to explain this
Natalie,
because it's relevant. So what
but
it's saying isn't just like, oh, we should let animals live. What we're saying is we shouldn't keep breeding them into existence
you
to
keep
exploit them.
adding more
So
branches and
that's
it takes me longer to go back to get back to my actual point. You keep adding like new shit that has nothing to do with our
right,
actual
because
point. No, you're
it's
trying to
different from the life is precious model, because if we said all life is precious, then we would say like, oh, we should breed more animals into existence, give them a few like a year of good life, and then kill them if life is really precious. Whereas the vegan
No,
stance
then
would
we
be,
would
hey,
not.
we shouldn't breed
We
them to
would,
exploit them in the first
but
place.
then killing them would not be in favor, like would not support the argument of
Right.
that. That would not make any sense. So it's
But
not.
would
It's
that
still the
year of
the
life
principle.
being precious justify the killing? Because that
This
that is an argument you
that
could make
that's not an
coming from the life is
opposition.
valuable
No,
perspective.
coming from a life of is valuable perspective, you should not kill.
Okay. And you shouldn't bring animals into the world, even if they have a good few years of life, if you're going to kill them.
Yeah. Of course.
Okay.
Yeah, because
Right.
once it's there, so life is precious. Life be already existing there is precious. It's worth protecting. That's what I mean by precious. So something dying is bad. Okay, we agree on that.
Without the edge cases.
Void of all context, Natalie. Do you know what that means?
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Like without
Void of all context.
without life having a gun and shooting you and killing all of your family members. Yeah, like
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
life is precious. Yeah, life is valuable. Life is worth protecting. Something dying is bad. But you, me, everyone, if we look at something dying or something bad happening just in general, we can determine whether we think that thing having been killed is morally okay, bad, or even good, right? That's what we do.
Right.
So and we determine that based on the question, was it necessary to kill that thing? Right?
Okay. And now you're
Right? And
going to bring in the calculations.
yes, and no, and that highly depends on, doesn't have to be a calculation. It's not even a rational thing. You mostly do that by feelings, right? It's not. I'm not saying that there is like a formula that we have in the back of our pocket or inside our DNA or something like that. What I'm saying is that what we basically the question, the answer to the question always depends on the two factors: how valuable was that life, and how necessary was that life dying, was having that, killing that life. These are the two things that we basically have to weigh against each other. And if we come out with a positive, we say, yeah, okay, I guess it's a shame he died, but he tried to rape 5 women, and we had to stop him.
Yeah.
Right. So, and then that would be the case for absolute necessity, like a big necessity, like your bodily, like your body, you would get bodily harm. And then we can also, like, we can tweak this formula at two places. The one place we can tweak the formula is how necessary was it for you? You could have been raped, which is a huge, like, it can fuck up your whole life, right? So it's almost like dying. So it's a very high necessity. So we would even be cool with killing the Pope, right? So, but
especially the Pope, if he's going out raping people.
Especially the Pope. But then we can also tweak at the other on the value of the life. For example, if we think about abortion, and I'm pretty sure, I mean, I know that I think you're a Democrat, and you have also I'm not sure if you're sorry. I don't want. I thought I heard that in a video of yours, but it doesn't matter. I don't know
so,
what is your.
Yeah. We don't have to go into that.
We don't have to go into that if you don't want to. But some people would argue that a woman not wanting to go through a pregnancy is okay to kill a life. And we know that sentience already and we know that abortions happen way after science says that they're sentience, right?
Yeah.
So you kill a human being, like not even an animal, a human being that is sentient already, for a necessity that is not that high, and you would never do that to a baby, but you would do that to a fetus. So there is already, like, we can also tweak it at that formula.
I just clarify, I probably wouldn't personally have an abortion. I haven't found a good argument against the pro-life position.
But you understand the concept, right? You understand the concept.
Not legally. I mean, legally, I understand banning it. But
the concept of the formula that I'm basically giving you. And now we can look at other cases. For example, you taking the car or you taking the train, right? So you take the train, you kill thousands of flies on the way there, right? When you
on the train, you mean when you're driving?
Yes, like when I drive, like I drive with a car 100 I don't know miles in miles, but 150 kilometers an hour on the highway,
Yeah.
and my windshield is full of bugs after I'm done,
Yeah.
and these are
So
all like
it's
sentients.
crazy numbers how many bugs
These
are
are
killed from
and these
cars.
are
I
all
will clarify,
sentient.
I'm pretty anti-car as well. I don't know if you want to go down that rabbit hole.
But
Um,
no, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. I'm just asking you, what would you think of me doing that just for driving, coming to my place, arriving at my place like 1 hour earlier? I'm driving like I'm killing like thousands of bugs. But imagine I would kill 100 monkeys instead. Like it would be a totally different. You would look at a totally different crime, quote unquote, right? Like you
yeah.
would.
Well, so
Would
I
you not make the
do.
difference there?
No, there's definitely a difference, but I do think that we should be trying to move away from cars as a society.
I'm not.
And
That's
the
besides the point.
biking.
That's besides the point, Natalie. Focus.
Okay,
That's
just
besides
figured
the
I'd get some
point.
anti-car
No,
advocacy
no.
out there anyway.
No, no,
I
no,
think they're very
no,
detrimental to society.
no, no, no. I'm just going to shut you down
Right,
by
right.
just
So
saying
that
yes, I
would go
agree.
back to the scale of sentience, which is that monkeys are higher on the scale of sentience than insects, which some insects are sentient, some aren't. There's a lot of evidence coming out. And then I think you could factor lifespan into that as well. So the average insect, I mean, if it's a fly, right, they're going to live 15 to 30 days, whereas monkeys can live, I don't actually know how long monkeys can live, but certainly longer than 30 days. So you would place a higher value on the monkey life than
So
the bug life.
you basically change now your stance by adding life expectancy
I put that in
into
there
the
earlier.
I don't think so. Like I think
Yeah, yeah, I mentioned
no.
it.
When you said when you laid out your main argument, you have laid out the history. I mean, it doesn't matter. You can always add
Sure,
it.
sure.
Like it does. You can always change your position. But I
Yeah.
just would like to
Well,
acknowledge
I
that
I think I
at this
mentioned
point,
coral because it
so
has a high life expectancy but
so
no
there is
sentience,
basically
so it's different.
two axes, right? So one is like sentience, and one is like life expectancy. And the more you're here, the more precious your life is. Is that what you're saying?
I am not sure, because I think there's a lot of different factors as well. But I want to go back to one thing. So let's go back to the driving example. So is what
No.
you're
Yeah.
positing that the insects and the monkeys should be of the same value? Is that what you think?
I mean, the thing is, either we have a binary thing, like like at this point, I was only thinking going off of sentience as a criterion for the value of life, right? So
Yeah.
I think that the value of the life of a human is infinitely higher than the value of the life of an animal. So
Even like a whale.
yes, yes, yes.
And is that just because it's
That's
your
arbitrary.
species?
That is
Okay, it's
arbitrary. Yes,
arbitrary.
that's
Okay.
arbitrary. And it basically comes down to what is more similar to me, like from the mirror neurons thing that we talked about at the beginning, basically. So what I dislike about harm being done to other people is ultimately coming from a place of me feeling bad when other people get hurt. Things that are similar to me because it feels like it could happen to me, right?
So
And
it's
we
not
don't like
about
that.
them having to go through pain. It's about your feelings about them having to go through pain.
Ultimately, that's what I
Okay.
think. That's what I think where it comes from.
I think
And then
that's probably where I would mostly differ.
sure, but it doesn't seem like we are very different in our way we are determining what's morally bad and what's not, because you seem to make the same distinction the same way you basically have an arbitrarily different reaction to flies and bugs dying than to monkeys dying. Seems to be the same way. Like I would never eat
Well,
monk. Yeah.
there's also kind of tying back to the definition of veganism, which is the exploitation aspect, right? So neither of these cases is exploitation, but
I
let's
hope
say
you're
you
not
wanted
running
to
with this,
breed
Natalie.
a bunch of, I'm just saying if you wanted to
Okay.
breed a bunch of flies specifically to eat them, I think that would be worse than driving and
why is
killing flies due to intention.
why is eating a less good explanation for why you're killing something than coming somewhere early, like half an hour, or just going for a drive, just going for a
Yeah,
ride? It's like eating is
because those
way better explanation.
no, it has to do with like the breeding aspect of it. So like you're breeding these individuals who wouldn't exist otherwise unless you were eating them. Whereas the flies in the world, you can't do anything about that. There's going to be wild flies, and they're probably going to get hit by a car,
But
whether that's you or someone else.
from the aspect of preciousness of life, like from you're not reducing the amount of life, at least, right? That there will be like an argument, even like it would be better to produce and then kill than to extinguish, right?
Well, that's why I initially disagreed with the life is precious
Then
argument, because it leaves
but then
like
you
that
agreed.
that loophole there
But at some point you
to move
agreed.
along, to move
No,
along.
no, that's not true, Natalie. That's
Yeah,
not
well, I
true.
made that
Because
position clear.
you
I made the position clear that I didn't think it was justified to
wait,
breed
wait,
animals into existence because of the ideas life
Natalie,
is precious. I made
I'm
that
so
very
disappointed.
clear.
I'm so disappointed. You
Why?
because you look because you're not telling the truth, because you looked up preciousness and then you said,
Sure.
okay, I've misunderstood
But
you,
but I had the
and now
caveat
you're
that we
basically
shouldn't just
telling
say
me
life is precious,
that you
therefore
faked
we're justified
everything.
to bring animals into existence.
Did you
Right?
fake?
Can you acknowledge that?
Did you fake looking it up and then saying, I
Well, we
now
changed
I
it to
understand?
valuable. I did look that up.
And then you, after
But
looking it up, you were like, okay, now I understand. Okay, yeah, you're
but I
right.
had the caveat,
You are
which is
right.
what you just brought up with the breeding the fly thing. You went back to the idea that life is precious, and I brought up that caveat when I initially agreed to the precious framework.
No, I'm asking you, is it better to extinguish, like to reduce the amount of the species, like, or to reduce the life completely, rather than breed it and then kill it? Like, do you think that there is a significant difference in that?
Oh, yeah, I would say that
Why?
both are bad if you can avoid them because
Why is one worse than the other?
um because one I think we could get to intention here too. Like let's say you are driving, right? And you see a bunch of flies in one lane and then another lane there aren't any. And you specifically drive into the one with a bunch of flies just to kill them. To
Yeah,
me, that's the same as breeding a
because
bunch of flies into existence to
because
eat
you
them.
have removed the necessity.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, even
in
if
both
you
of
even
the
want to say driving's a necessity, which I know you didn't want to get into.
no,
Um,
necessity in a very broad sense, in the sense of very, we can also speak of tiny amounts of necessity, like the small amount of joy that you feel by riding, right? Let's call this even like in a very abstract way, if we call that also a necessity, like a tiny necessity, like a small moment of joy. If we would call that even a necessity, you would even take away
that's not
that.
a necessity. But I do, so we
It's
have 20 minutes left, so I just want to make
sure.
sure we get into like the main, like, what is your, let's say I were a pig right now. Like, let's say I'm a pig
Yeah.
and you have to justify putting me into a gas chamber when I'm 6 months old, chopping me up and eating me. How would you morally justify that to me right now?
To you,
If
but
I were a pig, like, let's say I'm the pig that you're going to eat.
I've already told you, like, there is I think that no matter if I kill the pig or if I kill the plant, like if I don't eat the pig, I'm going to eat the plant.
Yeah.
And from a cell perspective, from all of the things that are basically the only thing that is different, that I have more projections of more human projections onto the pig. So I would say to the pig, I know we are very similar. I know you can yell like me. I know you have eyes like me. I know you have a mouth like me.
I
You
have
have
like
a nose like me.
90% of our
We
DNA.
are very similar, but I can't make that the reason. Like, I can't, that's not the reason. It doesn't make it better if I don't eat you. Like, it's not the fault of the plant that it doesn't have a nose, that it can't yell, it can't cry, it can't run away. That's not the fault of the all the other living beings that are dying instead of you. So I'm sorry,
Well,
something has to
but
die.
you still have to factor all the plants that that pig ate throughout their life too. So even if it was just a one to
It's
one like that, it's
all
not.
just biomass. It's all
So
just biomass. It's all
so
just
your
biomass.
argument is basically you should be able to kill any animal whenever you want.
I think that life is precious. Okay,
But
so
that's a
I think
contradiction because if you say life is precious, then
it's
you
not.
wouldn't want to kill animals.
Yes, except if I want to eat. I would
So
never.
life is
I would
precious
never.
until you're hungry.
Yes, that's what we're talking about the whole time. Like the amount of the necessity is there for me in my
But the
moral
necessity is
framework.
not there. There's
But
no
the
necessity
necessity
for you
is
to eat the
there for
pig.
the necessity is there for something alive to die.
No, there's not, because there's different numbers, right? Because when you have that pig, then a bunch of things that were alive, and I feel like we should keep this on sentience because I'm not sure why you're equating plant life to animal
You
life.
think you can
Maybe we
quantify?
could start there.
You think you can quantify life and just make a mathematical calculation where you can just
No, no,
add
no,
up
I'm
the amount
asking
of lives? No, no,
you. I'm
no. That's
asking
what you're
you to
saying.
quantify it.
No, no. You are saying you're killing more plants if
Right.
you eat the pig. In that moment, you're quantifying it, right? But for
I'm
me,
saying that
this
if your
is
calculation is life is precious, then a lot more life
this
is
is
killed with the
this
pig
is
than the plant.
this is all life. It's not like the plant, one plant. It's not like it's just one plant. You have one plant with X leaves and blah blah blah. So it's all a huge mass of biological material that is alive and that wants to survive and
So
that
you
wants
think
to.
plants and animals are the same, basically.
I think in moral consideration, it's the same. Yeah,
Okay, but
in terms of moral
what
consideration.
about, like, would you be willing to look into some of the scientific literature on it and maybe have that inform your
I
worldview?
I,
Like, if
I
you
have
found out that it was very different, how would you think about that?
the thing is, I have looked into it and I've really tried to find out more about it. It's really hard to find, and there's really not a lot there. I can tell
Wait,
you.
wait, wait,
Wait, wait.
wait, wait, wait.
There's two strategies. You can correct me if I'm wrong. You wanted to know if I've looked into it and what would convince me. Let me
Right,
answer
and
you. Let me
yeah, and
answer
I'm
you. Let
okay,
me
okay,
answer
okay,
you.
okay.
So there's basically two ways you go about it usually in the scientific literature, as far as I know.
Yeah,
So one is to look at the hardware, to look at specific parts that exist in the living being, like a brain, like neurons, like pain receptors, etc. That's the first thing. And then the other way to go about it is to look at reactions. So to look at if it's screaming, if it's like trying to run away, if it's trying to do something against you, basically inflicting pain. So these are the two things. And to me, both of these
well,
things, and we've both agreed that
there's
basically.
more things though
Okay, you
that
can
you could
correct
look
me.
into.
You can correct me once I'm just done. Like,
Okay.
we've both agreed that there is just one empirical case of sentience that we know of, and that is our own case of,
Yeah.
like, that is our own sentience. So we don't actually know if any other person has pain. So the only thing we
Right.
can go about, the only thing we can do is to look for hardware that is similar, or to look for reactions that are similar. But that all translates to just to how human is it, how similar is it to me, which is exactly my point that I made at the beginning. That is basically the basis for the morale, which is how human is it, which determines
Well, so
how
I'm
I feel
curious,
about it.
like, what about an element of behavior science where like they're not in pain, right? Like where you're testing, there's a lot of studies on like sheep and different animals where they're testing their memories and their ability to form bonds with their family and other humans. Would that be an area of scientific literature that you would find compelling?
I mean, I think that for the moral consideration, as far as I know, you haven't brought up intelligence at all. Like, the thing that you brought up is basically pain. I think that's the only thing that is important for you, as far as I
I
understand.
um that is a big part of it, but I think that like for speaking to you, someone who seems to maybe value rationality, then I think intelligence would
I want to know what you
maybe
think.
be persuasive to you.
It doesn't matter what persuades me. I would prefer, like, to know what you think about it.
Um, yeah. So once again, for me, like I don't tend to think about things in this way. I think it's a little myopic, a little short-sighted. I tend to think of like, what can I control? I
In
have the
what way?
choice. Right, because
Wait, in what way?
whether a different animal, like in the way of quantifying intelligence,
But I never
or
quantified that. Like you said that I told you I
yeah,
have just an arbitrary line which ends at human. That's my,
right,
I don't quantify anything.
that's yours. Okay,
Quantification
so
is
for
totally on
me,
you. Like that's not me. That's you. Actually, you think that way.
well, you were asking me how I think about intelligence,
Yeah,
right?
but
So when
you
I'm
told me that
at
I
the
quantify it.
grocery store, it sounded like, well, you were asking me about intelligence. So
Yes,
yeah, I was
that
just
doesn't
trying to
mean
figure
that
it out.
I'm quantifying it. Like I,
Okay, sure, you're not quantifying intelligence.
you brought intelligence up when you say they have communication, they have like relationships with each other.
Right, because I
I
was
thought
thinking you
what you're
might be able to find that persuasive, but it turns out you don't find it persuasive.
no, because
Okay,
I
so then I don't even need to bother talking about it because there's zero way to change your mind. You've basically admitted that all you care about is if they're a different species. So what else is there to even
are
talk about?
you. It's about what look. We are having a conversation about the ethical implications of eating meat, right?
Yeah,
And you tell me what you
sort
think
of.
about it. You tell me what you think about it, and I tell you what I think about it. What's persuasive or not to me is like if it's if you have a better moral framework than mine, like mine is already arbitrary. It's already pretty low. Like
Okay.
as long as you can bring up a consistent model that doesn't run into problems and that doesn't make like double standards for things like for example between flies and pigs.
Why should that matter if there's differences? Like, why can't we just agree that, like, if we have the option to choose between eating a pig and eating plants, the scientific evidence is clear that pigs are much more sentient and similar to us than plants. Shouldn't we eat on the lower?
But
Uh,
you have to show that sentience is a good determinant for what's a valuable life, right? That's the first thing you have to show. and
but you're just saying, okay, so your
and
idea of a
also I
valuable
don't believe
life
that.
is just being human.
Yeah, and also I think that what you consider sentience is also just being human.
No, that's
Yes.
sapient, because sentience, I would say, applies to. I mean, I talked about my whole scale. I didn't just put humans on that
Yeah, I
scale.
know, but the scale depends on factors like hardware, what hardware is there, and the only correlation we have between this hardware and the thing you call sentience is a human. Like so why would we assume that sentience can only happen on hardware that is on humans? Like that's the anthropocentric thing about it.
Yeah, I didn't assume that.
But that's
Um,
what science assumes when it's talking about sentience, when it's
no, no,
saying
no.
what is the criteria, like when you look at an animal, what
Yeah,
how do you determine whether it's sentient or not?
sure. So I'll just first read the definition of sentience, which is the capacity to experience feelings, sensations, and subjective perceptions, encompassing the ability to have positive or negative experiences. So basically, sentience is the ability to perceive and react to stimuli consciously, experiencing them from the inside. Um, and
Yeah, how do you
I think
determine that?
that,
How do you determine that scientifically? Like you need an empirical, like how would you empirically determine whether a living being is sentient or not? I have given you like two ways and you said that
right?
there is
Yeah,
a third
yeah.
one. Yeah.
Well, the third one, I was just thinking if you might want to look into the science of it to see if it would change your mind. That was more
What
about
was
like
it?
the bonds they have. It was the scientific research on animals, not in a situation of like running away from pain, but just in their daily lives, right? Like their
But
experience with their family
that is
and
just
their
the second
bonds
one.
and things like that.
That is not a third one. That is just the second one. Like even if we expand sentience to be more than just pain response, that would be just reactions that are similar to ours, right? So if we look at
Okay.
communication, so if we look at, for example, bonds that they have, how do we determine that they have bonds? Because we compare them to what we would do, right? Like if we
And
see, like
well, also like brain scans, they can do that on
that's the
animals now
first one.
too.
That's the
So,
first one. So they look at
okay,
the
okay.
hardware, right? So it's
Yeah.
just hardware and behaviorist analysis, right? And both of
And if
these,
we look at the hardware and behavior of plants, we can see that they're not sentient. So why are you equating plants with animals?
I'm saying that your criterion for sentience in animals is basically just a proxy for how human is it. how close is it to humans? Like if you look at like what makes you think that sentience is something that is reserved to, like, has to be the way our human brains are, right? Like there is nothing in
Um,
science, there is nothing empirical telling you that brains are the only thing that can produce sentience. So that
well,
already is problematic. And then if we look at the reactive side, we
the
find a bunch
ability
of
to
evidence.
receive stimuli is generally predicated on, having the neurons that can perceive it, whether that's in a brain or, I mean, even the smallest animals have some sort of brain. So,
Yeah, but why do you think that? What scientific evidence is there that sentience is only reserved for things that have a brain?
um,
It can't be. Do you see?
sure.
Because
So,
sentience is something that is
well, no, no,
metaphysical.
no.
It's not, you can't find that. It's impossible for you to find.
It's related to consciousness.
It's the same
And
thing. Sentience and consciousness is basically the same thing.
well, they're not necessarily the same thing. Like an organism can be able to feel without necessarily being like aware of their own feelings, right? Like if we have a person in a coma, um, they are like able to be feel, but they're not aware of their feelings. But I feel like this is like getting too into the weeds. We only have a few minutes left, so I just want to tie it back to like
Just
if
wanna,
you're in the grocery store, like why choose to force an animal to go through torturous conditions when you could easily choose not to?
because I've already told you that uh, I think that I don't reduce harm by choosing animals over something else outside of the negative.
Let's talk about that. So
Uh,
how does it not reduce harm?
but you keep it. It all ties back to what you just ran away from. Like it's
No, it
the
doesn't. It's very specific. Like, how would it not reduce harm for you to choose plants over animals in the grocery store? Just give me an argument for that.
because what we would consider harm is based on the question of what we think is dying instead of that animal. There is always
The
something. There is always something being destroyed by me eating. Always
but
something.
they're way different
Yeah, but
levels and
that's
numbers.
but that's our
It
contention. That's our contention. That's exactly our contention. You
so
say
it's at the
numbers.
beginning
Wait,
you
wait, wait, wait,
said that
wait.
the
You
plants
say,
feeling pain thing wasn't your main argument, but now you're basically saying it is your main argument.
I'm not sure that I've said that it's not my main argument. I've said I have two contentions,
You
and
said at
this
the
was one of them.
beginning.
Okay, then I change it. I don't know. I don't know if I've said that,
Okay.
but then I change it.
Well, how about
But
the fact that the pig takes so many more plants?
that's the second problem, like that you have, like you're adding a quantification to it that I think whether nor you can sustain. No,
You added the quantification because you're
you
saying that,
say,
oh, something's gonna have to die either way, but I'm saying way more things die if you
but
choose the pig. So how
but
do you address that argument?
you saying way more is a quantification.
But that's
You making a
reality.
comparison.
That's just reality, right? Like
You think,
if we take 100 calories and we put them into a pig, we only get 10 of those calories back, right?
but do you see how you make the
So you're
calculation between
squandering.
amounts of plants? Like how do you, like you have to put a value of life x to each plant and then make that calculation, right? Like
Well,
you're making
I'm
the
trying to
quantification.
play your game. So like, okay, if you're saying that something's gonna have to die anyway, no matter what I eat, how is that
Yes.
not a quantification?
I am saying that it's the same. Like it's not, it's always
So
an infinite.
putting a pig in a gas chamber is the same as mowing the grass.
Yes. Yes, from a moral ethical standpoint, yes. The difference is
That's
the
absolutely insane.
the difference is my feelings about it are obviously different. So because
What
I
about the
am
pig's feelings and the plant's feelings?
uh I think they're actually, it's the same as well.
So torturing a cat is the same as
I
eating
think
a banana.
no, obviously, like
Why not?
because one is eating and one is torturing. Like torturing for joy is not okay. Like because I already say that life
Well,
is
the pigs are
precious.
tortured for meat.
Yeah, but for food is different than if you just torture it for torturing it.
So I torture a cat and then I eat them. Then it's the same as eating a
But the
banana.
torturing was not necessary for eating it.
But all the animals are tortured in the meat industry.
Yeah, I don't think that's good. I think that's really bad.
But you're still paying for it to happen.
Yeah, but that's an engineering problem. We could change that. And I
No,
am
we can't.
that's the thing that I told you. Like that's the thing that I would advocate for changing that.
But there's no painless way to kill an animal, because if we use euthanasia, then it's going to ruin the quality of the meat. But let's say I was
But I told you,
torturing.
I already told you, like this is an engineering problem. And if
Yeah,
it's
but
not
I don't
possible,
think it's fair to talk about it without
no,
saying
if it's
like the
not
reality of what's happening to these animals, right?
if it's not possible to kill an animal without pain, then I'm okay with it suffering pain. Don't get me wrong.
Why?
Because I think that something dying will always
Well, it's
suffer
not
pain.
just them dying; it's them feeling pain.
Something dying will always feel pain because it's bad for it, because
Not if it's a plant.
everything that lives has a wish to live.
But plants don't feel pain when we kill them because they don't have pain receptors.
Yeah, but I believe that
But animals do.
and I believe that that's just a proxy for you
So you're okay with
project
torturing others just because you want to? Just
no
to
for
clear that
eating.
up. So torturing animals is okay if it's for eating them.
If it's not possible to kill without inflicting pain, I don't know if you would call that torture, to be honest. I have no idea what
Well, we
the
agreed that
correct
torture is
definition
inherent to meat production right now, which is what we're really talking about.
But is torture not isn't part of the definition of torture that it's that you want the thing to feel pain? Like if I
No, it's
torture
any sort of
someone,
like unnecessary pain, I believe.
exactly, and in that case it would be necessary. So I'm not okay with torture.
But you acknowledged that buying meat in this day and age involves torture of that animal. So you are okay
No, but
with
torture,
torturing animals to eat.
because
Yes, you are, because that's what you're doing.
but you've just said it.
That's what you're doing.
But you've just said it yourself. You've just said that torture is only torture. Inflicting pain is only torture if it's not necessary to do so. Like if it's necessary to
It's not necessary. No.
wait, if you kill someone, because you're enraged and then you like stab that person 5 times, did you torture him before he died? No.
Just answer me this. So we
Wait,
acknowledge
can you
acknowledge
answer
that
Can you answer that? Like if you
if
attack
you
someone,
stab them after they're dead, that's
no,
not
no,
torture.
not
They're already
after
dead.
that, not after they're dead. Like if in the process of killing someone, you're like stabbing them 50 times and that's how you kill them and you inflict like a bunch of pain before they die. But are you torturing that person? I don't think so. I think you just murdered a person. Because like your intention was not to inflict pain, your intention was to murder, to kill.
Sure, but
So
I
it's not
think you went
torture.
above and beyond. But like, let's say you bred that person into existence, you forced them into a cage for 6 months to a year, you forced them onto a truck,
I don't like
you
that.
cut off their teeth, right? But that's
don't
what
like that.
happens to these animals. Their
But I don't.
teeth are
But you
being
should ask
cut
me.
off, their tails are being cut off.
But
But this is what you're endorsing when you're buying it. You are endorsing the torture of animals, whether you
that
like
is
it
true.
or not.
That is true.
But you're okay with that
But you're also paying
because
taxes.
you do it.
But you also
I wish I weren't. I'm working on changing
yeah, and
subsidies for sure.
and I wish I weren't. I wouldn't do a bunch of stuff as well. Like that's just the reality in which we live in. You can ask me.
But I don't have a choice about whether I pay
you have
taxes.
enough
You have a
things.
choice over what you eat.
You
You
have-
have a choice over what you
I
eat.
think
I don't have a
you
choice
have
of paying taxes.
Look, we're now going into a discussion that I didn't want to have, which is basically the engineering discussion. But I could now we can sit here and basically tell each other what we
well,
could
you're
do.
doing something
wait,
that
let
you
me
don't
finish.
even agree with.
Let me please finish. So I do bad things. Okay.
That you don't have to do.
Can you let me
That
finish?
you know are wrong.
Natalie.
Okay.
Please. So I do bad things, okay? So I do horrible things that I could avoid doing by making choices at the supermarket, right? These are
Okay.
really, really bad. Okay?
Okay.
I agree with that. That's
Okay.
bad. Like that's not the really interesting point. The really interesting point is
I think that is interesting.
no, wait. But the really interesting point is the things where you say I do something horrible and I say, no, Natalie, that's not horrible.
You just said it. I didn't say it. You did.
Okay, you're not judging me. You're totally non-judgmental. Okay. You don't say it, but you think it. Doesn't matter. So that we think the thing that we're talking about is the interesting conversation we should have is the things where you say what you're doing is horrible and I say no, it's not horrible. For example, when you say
Okay.
you how can you eat a pig? And I say I eat a pig because of XY reason, right? That's the interesting conversation. The interesting conversation
I
is not
disagree.
you saying, yeah, but you could with your choices you do this, and I say, yeah, Natalie, I'm sorry, yeah, true, I will think about it. You have to make me think about it more, and I will try to think about it more, and I will try to
I think
change it.
that's interesting because once again, like I'm very action oriented, and I think that our actions are what makes the difference in this world, right? So if you're saying like these are bad actions that I shouldn't even be doing, but you're still doing them, to me that's interesting because that's like
But
a
you do
cognitive
too.
dissonance
Like
thing.
we could
What?
find like I'm pretty sure like with from the clothes that you're wearing to like everything that you have in your house, like how much slave labor is in there. Like we could find so many things, and we both agree that you with your scale, right? You still put the life and the suffering of humans above the life and the suffering of animals, right? So we could make a case for why you're a horrible person as well, right? Like so it's always possible to do that. And like, why are you activist in this area while you're wearing something that is done with slave labor? So
This
that's
is
not.
I get secondhand
I mean, but
clothes,
isn't
just
it crazy?
to clarify.
I mean, yeah, but like, isn't it crazy that like this is? I think um I don't even know anything about you, but we both are pretty sure that a lot of the things that you have in your household are pretty problematic, right?
I disagree. I also
We
think
live
there's
in
a big
such a
difference
world. It's
between
normal. It's normal. I'm not picking you out like as someone.
yeah.
Yeah,
I would encourage you to watch my video about
I've watched it.
the most ethical foods
I've
video.
watched it. It was my favorite video, to be
Okay,
honest.
nice. And then did you see at the end where I basically conclude that like our actions are what matters, not what we're consuming, right? So like let's say you wanted to say, "Oh, I'm going to eat meat, but I'm going to donate a bunch of money to animal rights charity or I'm going to fight to end factory farming." That would be a completely different discussion that we're having, right?
But then I would be like, yeah, why am I not doing anything for Palestine right now? Like, why am I not doing anything for
Because that's
Myanmar right
less
now?
within
Right?
your
Like, right?
control, right? Like you don't have
Huh?
control, like you're not the one killing Palestinian children,
Yeah,
right? But you are the one paying for animals to die.
but I could just send money, like the money that I'm saving by buying the shitty animal product, or like the money that I'm saving there, I could send it to a help organization in Myanmar, and have save the leg of some child. You know,
Yeah, and
like
I think that
that's
would
why.
probably be a moral good, but I think that like a lot of these organizations, we don't necessarily know um what the money's going toward.
I mean, yeah, let's say
But
I do know. I mean, you keep like going from a moral conversation that we're having to
to a practical one.
to an engineering problem, and I don't think that like that should not be the thing that you're advocating for,
Why not?
because the engineering problem is not is too big. It's just too big. It's not something.
Well, we're never going to solve it, right? So we should I
No,
mean
you
the
have to make basically a moral distinction before you can even make an engineering question. Actually,
I
before you can even
disagree.
answer the engineering question. So I should be thinking about what's more important: me saving animals or me saving children in Myanmar.
Not necessarily, but I do actually have to hop off. It's
Sure.
a bit after the time we said. But yeah, I appreciate this conversation,
Me too.
and yeah,
I
I
wish
hope
you
you
all
have
the best.
a thanks. All right, bye.
Have a good one. Bye.